When you are actually doing your work as a social worker, what do you do? I mean, you are a high school social worker. Are you doing cases? What do those cases look like, or like, what do you do as a in your typical day as a social worker?
So this is broad and complex as well, because a school social worker is different depending on state, school district, environment, and even within the district. I'm in an urban school district, so it's huge. And I've literally, in the time I've been here, which is about maybe 8 or 9 years now, have went through three different types of social work roles within a school. So what I currently do in a day in my life currently is that I'm a crisis social worker. So I'm in high schools and middle schools and junior highs in the Bronx. So I go into schools and I'm supposed to be the next level after the school counselor, the school psychologist, the school social worker, anything that they're dealing with that has become too much. That's my role, to come in and try and work with that student or work with the staff or even work with the school culture. And this was all designed out of an initiative with our mayor in New York, his wife, that mental health is so important in school, and they built a whole division and grant around us school response clinicians. And so we go in and we're supposed to help. And it's only 2 years old, the program, so it's very young. They're still working out the quinks, but the whole method behind it is that restorative justice model, and to not quick for suspension and punishment, and to really look at what is going on a biopsychosocial level for these students, and then how we can help them. I may start 8 o'clock in the morning. I usually, especially in that position, never got lunch because your lunch would become sessions with students that will get in trouble if they go to the cafeteria. So your room becomes the hangout spot. So you don't really get like a break because they're in there with you. But this will keep them out of trouble on the outside. You're dealing with resources, whether it be helping to not, if the apartment evicted out of an apartment, or getting them outside counseling or outside family support, or donations for clothes because they're homeless. We've literally at one point had a student shower in the school because he shelters are not sometimes the safest place, and so it's hard sometimes to convince some people to go to shelters because of the experiences they've had in shelters. And so they'd rather do the, like subway hopping, bench hopping. So you're facing, like I said before, so many different things that are issues within our community and issues within our society, but they're all bubbled into the students in the school, and they're expected to come in and learn and just do school. And that's very hard. But I do say a rule of thumb for me is to, and all social workers, is to do no harm. So I'm very cautious of what I open up or bring up. So um, if it's dangerous to that student to address certain things, I won't address it. I'll teach coping skills, I'll go through other things, because at the end of the day, they're with me and then they got to go to class. And if you trigger something, you don't know what the reaction might be to that trigger. And then they have to go now and talk with a teacher, and you can cause explosions, you can cause fights, you can cause different things to happen if you're not very careful. So it's a job that you have to really be 5 steps ahead of whatever you're doing. And it's a lot of mental Olympics of keeping on track of how you're doing things.
So you mentioned that the job is very, it's a lot. I'm gonna just say that it's a lot because you're dealing with, if you're not dealing with one teen, you might be dealing with another, or you might be dealing with a group of teens, and then there are also their mental health, their education, their home life, and trying to help them prosper as they go throughout their education within like high school or middle school. How do you take time to yourself and really work on your work life balance with a very busy and probably mentally taxing job?
So, and I've been having a lot of conversations around this in COVID, because the lines have blurred. As you can see, we're in our homes, we're in our space now with students. And I think that that was the biggest piece for me, that when I got to my home, I'm home. So there's no phone calls, there's no emails. It's just like when we leave the building, everything gets left at the building. And I'm very good at separating. I know it's very hard to do. And sometimes it is reminding myself that there's always a crisis, there's always something happening, there's always the worst moment ever. It's the nature of my job. Um, so I still have to shut down and take time for myself. Before COVID, I did monthly spa days. So once a month, I would go to the spa and just zen out. It may be knowing when to take that walk and actually have that lunch and close up the office like today, no one's in my room. I need this moment. And they'll understand. And then knowing that we can't fix everything, we're not going to solve everything, and everyone is their own individual being. And I think that's the most important piece, because when you're in a field like this, a helping field where you're helping people, sometimes you can get like the heroes complex and you got to save everybody. And that's not possible. And that and this is something I impart to all. I take interns, and what I always tell all my interns is that you never know who you're having an impact on. Just be your genuine self, and that's the way that it will show up. It's a lot of mental game. I think that's where self-care comes in. The self-care is more the mental self-care of really being true to yourself about what the role of who you are and what you're doing in that role. Because it is so much, the massage ain't taking away what you're hearing every day. Being knowledgeable about vicarious trauma, and you taking the imprints of other people's trauma every day. um, just taking those moments. I will sometimes sit in my car, like, the parent, when they talk about the parent when they get to their house and they sit in their car for an extra half an hour before going
Yes.
into
Yep.
it's the same way. I may pull up to the school building early and I'll just sit in my car and listen to music and zen out for a little bit, because I know it's not a good day. And then knowing yourself. And they do teach us in social work school, and when you're going through, is that you have to know yourself and know what's going on for you. So if it's a day that I know I can't be there emotionally, it's recognizing that, because there are days that I can't counsel. It's a tough day. And so it might be a day that I'm like, hey, I'm just going to focus on paperwork and I'm not going to see any students today because I'm not mentally where I can feed you. It may be knowing when to go back and say, hey, what I said yesterday, you could throw that away. That wasn't a good day. That wasn't great advice. So being very self-aware, I think, is the biggest self-care that you can do for yourself when you're tired, when you're stressed out, when there's a lot going on for you. You can't be there for anybody else.
What surprised you about going into your position as a social worker in a high school and middle school? Like, were your hours long? Like, you mentioned that you didn't have lunch. Like, what other surprises came along with the job that you weren't like at all
Aware
aware of?
of. So the first year, I think I did everything awful. Like the first 2 years, I worked very long hours. I was there early. I stayed late. All my money was going to everything that a kid brought up. Oh, you don't have this. Oh, you don't have this. Like, I really was not practicing any self-care and awareness. And that leads to horrible burnout, and tiring. Understanding the population that you're around is more important. And that really was a little bit surprising, because you go to school and you learn in school and you're assuming you're getting the best school knowledge possible about what you're supposed to do, but we don't sometimes remember, or at least have the knowledge to know that school is also part of the system. And that system sometimes doesn't speak to every population, especially when you're dealing with minority populations. So my first schools, I'm in Washington Heights and predominantly Spanish communities, or I'm in Queens with Bangladesh communities, and how you have to operate as a social worker, they did not teach you in school. They didn't touch these cultural norms when you're on that other side. You're not the student. and you're learning the system and the politics. That schools are politics. There's so much politics, and sometimes the politics overtakes the work. Um, they may have a great idea. Yes, let's put more social workers in a school, but the execution of it and what it looks like and how it's supposed to impact isn't the follow through. So I think if I put anything on there, that's the biggest piece. The politics that is in education and how it impacts your job is crazy. It's so big. And especially as a field that is there to change and is surrounded by social justice, you're a part of that system that you've been fighting on the outside. And to navigate and walk that line sometimes is very hard.
What was the most rewarding aspect of your job so far?
The kids. The kids. So especially when I was specifically just in one school social worker, I would get a kid in ninth grade who is still like young and little and they don't know themselves and they're trying to figure out their environment and you're working with them. And then by the time the person that comes out senior year and especially when they tell you back which something you taught them and they're like, yeah, miss. I think those are the big rewarding piece when you get to see the changes. It's what keeps the job going. Like even in the most frustrating, I always say people never leave jobs because of your work. We don't all do all work. It's usually the back stuff, administration, um, the politics, all those different stuff that usually makes a job too much. And anytime I get frustrated or, I feel like my back is against the wall with the system, a student will come in and have me cracking up or, just their ability, on a personal note, like my mom got sick while I was in that specific position. And I remember the kids were so protective of me when I came back. I took a leave for like a month. And then I came back and they were like, don't bother Miss Davis. You know her, she's got stuff. And I'm just like, I could talk for myself. And those little moments. I remember we had it was around that same time I came back and a kid hugged me. And this wasn't a hugging kid. This was like I'm gonna fight you for looking at me student. And he hugged me and then jumped off. And he was like, sorry, miss. And I'm like, it's okay. He's like, man, I just missed you. And I was like,
Oh.
yeah, you miss people. And I think those are rewarding moments because you see the change and the trust that is built. And I think anyone in society, not only youth, but the ability to have an adult or a trusted person in their life that no matter what they do, you're still there. All right, you got in a fight. You didn't follow what I said. They never follow what you say. I have a whole shirt that says that. Do what I said the first time. um, but they learn and they impart different stuff, and that's the most rewarding part of the job when you get to see some of those little changes that happen. Or a student comes in and be like, miss, I was gonna bust her, beep 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 beep, but then I was like, I'm gonna go to Miss Davis' room instead. Oh, gross.
You're not choosing violence today. I love that. Yes, listen to me.
Right.
And for my last question, just to wrap everything up in a little bow, how would you describe your career experience in 3 words?
Oh God, 3 words. Did you notice I was long-winded? Uh, um, oh my God. So I guess the first word is a rebirth. So rebirth would be my first word. Um, in coming into this field, I learned so much about myself, and it's been a rebirth of empowerment and knowledge and just what we're capable of, because when you're feeding others it also feeds you and you realize how powerful a person's story is, who we are as individual, both our past, present, and future. It's just very powerful. So I think that would be my first word. My second word is, and I'm a strength-based person, so I was trying to think of a negative word in my head, but it can't come because I'm just strength-based. So I would say growth. just the growth in our society. Every year, every student, every issue, every situation. I think I've been blessed as a 80s baby to see our world just shift from, the black computer screens to what it is today, and everything being on a phone. Along with technology moving, people have moved. And with people moving, we've learned more, especially for the field of social work, that we're not alone. And I think the growth of mental health awareness, especially in Black and Brown communities, has been very powerful and impactful. Seeing that before, you would be in your bubble. Oh, it's just me suffering this out in my town or a community, or this only happens in urban America, or this only happens here. And then we open Pandora's box, and that has led to growth, because it's like, okay, if this is impacting that person in that area, and that person in that, and that person in that area, then it can only be me. And then we have innovators of the world that are like, well, I need to change this, or I need to educate and let people know what else is out there. I need to build on what we're doing. So growth is a big one. So rebirth, growth, and society. Being a social worker, being an agent of change, being an advocate of social justice, my work is society. Even though I'm in a school, even if you're a social worker that's in a hospital, even if you're a social worker on MTV telling why people's personalities are doing what they do, it all connects. And so I think that would be my third world. Just looking at society always. There's the individual, and then there's the impact our world has on the individual.
Well, I like those three words. And I hope that all you out there also like those three words to help kind of basically explain what the world of social work is and what it has in store for you. I want to thank Dr. Kathyanne for joining me today, and please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to get updated videos, and also follow us on social media. I'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Teaching the diversity of social work is very important. One of the reasons this platform is important, because there isn't really anything to teach you or to gain knowledge about what it is to be a school social worker.
Thank you.